There is a specific kind of silence that exists only in the hours between 3 and 4 in the morning. It is not a peaceful silence. It is heavy. It presses against your eardrums. It is the sound of the world holding its breath, waiting for something to break. We live in an age where we believe technology protects us. We buy cameras for the doors, sensors for the windows, apps that tell us if a motion detector has tripped in the garage. We sleep better, or so we are told, because we have digital eyes watching over us while our biological eyes are closed. But what happens when those digital eyes see something you cannot explain? What happens when the device designed to make you feel safe becomes the very thing that confirms your worst nightmare? This story comes from a submission I received late last year. The sender, who asked to remain anonymous, let's call him David. David lived in a suburban development in Ohio, a quiet street, the kind of place where people leave their cars running while they grab the mail, the kind of place where you don't lock your back door because you know your neighbors. David was a man of logic. He worked in IT. He trusted systems. He trusted code. He did not believe in ghosts. He did not believe in monsters. He believed in sensors. And on a Tuesday night in November, his system sent him a notification that would dismantle his logic, piece by piece, until he was left with nothing but the raw primal instinct to survive. David had installed a comprehensive smart home security system 6 months prior. It was top of the line: motion detection, night vision, two-way audio, and cloud storage. He had cameras on the front porch, the back deck, and one specifically pointed at the driveway. He could check the feed from his phone anywhere in the world. That night, he was asleep. His wife was asleep. Their 6-year-old daughter was asleep down the hall. The house was dark, save for the standby lights on the television and the microwave. At 3:03 a.m., his phone buzzed. It was not an alarm. It was not a siren. It was a push notification from the security app. Motion detected, driveway. David, groggy and irritated, reached for the phone on his nightstand. He assumed it was a raccoon, maybe a stray cat. In his part of Ohio, wildlife wandered into yards often. He unlocked the screen and opened the app. The loading wheel spun for a moment, a circle of gray turning against the black background. When the live feed loaded, the driveway was empty. The grass was still. The cars were parked exactly where he had left them. The motion sensor light on the garage was off. There was nothing. David let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. A glitch, a bug in the software, a moth had flown too close to the lens. He dismissed the notification, placed the phone back on the nightstand, and closed his eyes. He told himself to go back to sleep. But sleep did not come. There's a feeling, a prickling at the base of the neck that tells you when you are being watched. You know this feeling. It is evolutionary. It is the part of your brain that remembers when humans were prey. David lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The silence of the house had changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was attentive. 5 minutes later, 3:08 a.m. The phone buzzed again, harder this time. Vibration against the wood of the nightstand. Motion detected. Back deck camera. David sat up. His heart rate was climbing. He could feel the thud of it in his throat. He grabbed the phone. He opened the app. He waited for the feed to load. The back deck was illuminated with the infrared night vision, casting the world in shades of ghostly gray and white. The patio furniture was undisturbed. The grill was covered. The sliding glass door was locked. He could see the latch in the video feed. There was no one there. "Damn it," he whispered.
He didn't want to wake his wife. He thought about calling the security company. He thought about rebooting the system, but a thought, cold and sharp, pierced through his irritation. 2 glitches in 5 minutes in different zones of the house? The driveway and the back deck were on opposite sides of the property. For a sensor to malfunction in 2 distinct locations simultaneously suggested a system-wide failure, or it suggested something was triggering them. David got out of bed. He needed to see the hub. The main control panel was in the kitchen downstairs. If the system was malfunctioning, the panel would show an error code. If someone was testing the sensors, the panel would show a breach. He grabbed his phone, using flashlight app to cut through the darkness of the hallway. The floorboards creaked under his weight. To anyone else, it would have been the sound of an old house settling. To David, in that moment, it sounded like a gunshot.
He reached the top of the stairs. He looked down into the living room. It was a cavern of shadows. The moonlight filtered through the blinds, creating stripes of pale light across the carpet. Everything looked normal. The couch, the TV, the rug. But then he saw it. The small LED light on the security hub in the kitchen was blinking red. Normally, that light was solid green. Green meant armed. Green meant safe. Red meant breach. Red meant open. David froze at the top of the stairs. His hand gripped the banister until his knuckles turned white. He stared at the red light. It pulsed rhythmically. Blink, 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 like a heartbeat. He should have called the police. That is what you're supposed to do. That is the protocol. But fear does a strange thing to the human mind. It makes you hesitate. It makes you want to verify the threat before you alert the authorities. He didn't want to be the guy who called 911 because a raccoon tripped a sensor. He decided to check the doors. Just a quick check. If they were locked, he would reset the system and go back to bed. If one was open, well, he would deal with it then. He descended the stairs. He moved quietly, placing his feet on the edges of the steps where the wood was strongest and least likely to creak. He reached the bottom. The kitchen was to his right. The hub was on the counter. He approached it slowly. As he got closer, he saw the screen on the hub. It wasn't showing an error code. It was showing a camera feed. It was the feed from the inside camera. David hadn't installed an inside camera. He valued his privacy too much. He refused to put lenses in the living spaces. He only wanted perimeter security. So why was the hub displaying a live feed of his own hallway? He leaned in. The image was grainy, black and white. It showed the bottom of the staircase. It showed his own feet standing on the bottom step looking at the hub. It was a live loop, but the timestamp on the video feed was wrong. It didn't say the current time. It said 03:03 a.m. The time of the first notification. David's breath hitched. He reached out to touch the screen, to wake it up, to see if it was a frozen image. Before his finger could make contact, the screen went black. The red light on the hub stopped blinking. It went solid off. The entire system had powered down. In the silence that followed, a new sound emerged. It came from the living room, a soft, wet sound, like a shoe stepping on a damp carpet.
David spun around. The living room was empty. The stripes of moonlight were undisturbed, but the air felt colder. He could see his breath faintly in the glow of the microwave clock. He grabbed a kitchen knife from the block on the counter. It was a pathetic weapon, a piece of steel against the unknown, but it was something. It gave his hand something to hold. "Is someone there?" he called out. His voice cracked. It sounded thin in the large room. No answer. He waited. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. Then his phone buzzed in his hand. He had forgotten he was holding it. He looked down. Another notification. Motion detected, living room camera. David dropped the phone. It clattered on the tile floor. He stared at it. He didn't have a living room camera. He knew he didn't have a living room camera. He had installed the system himself. He had configured zones. Zone 1, driveway. Zone 2, back deck. Zone 3, front door. There was no Zone 4. There was no living room. He picked up the phone with trembling hands. He opened the app. He expected an error. He expected a crash. Instead, he saw the feed. It was a view from high up, near the ceiling, looking down at the kitchen. It showed David standing there, holding the knife, looking at his phone. It showed the back of his own head. Someone was broadcasting from inside the house. Someone was inside the walls. David's mind raced through the possibilities. A hacker? Had someone breached his Wi-Fi and routed a camera feed? But there was no camera. He had walked through this house 1,000 times. He knew the corners. He knew the ceilings. There were no black domes, no lenses. He looked up toward the corner of the kitchen where the wall met the ceiling. There was a smoke detector. It was standard, white plastic, a small green LED blinking slowly. David stared at it. He remembered buying the house. He remembered the home inspection. The inspector had noted that the smoke detectors were hardwired and interconnected. They were 10 years old. He stared at the green light. It blinked. Blink. 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 Then the light changed. It turned red, and a voice came from the smoke detector. It was not a robotic voice. It was not a digital distortion. It was a human voice whispering, "Don't turn around, David." The blood in David's veins turned to ice. The voice was calm. It was intimate. It knew his name. It knew he was holding the knife. It knew he was thinking about turning around to face the source of the sound. "Who are you?" David demanded. He raised the knife, pointing it at the ceiling. "I'm the one who watched you install the cameras," the voice whispered from the detector. "I'm the one who watched you set the passwords. I'm the one who watched you tuck your daughter in tonight." David's grip on the knife faltered. The metal felt heavy, useless. The voice wasn't coming from a speaker. It was coming from the device itself, modulated through the alarm system's intercom feature. But the system was off. The hub was dark. How was the voice transmitting? "Where are you?" David shouted. He was losing control. The logic he clung to was evaporating. "I'm in the attic," the voice said, "but I'm not the only one." David's eyes widened. Not the only one? "Check the baby monitor." David's daughter slept down the hall. They had a baby monitor on the nightstand, an old analog frequency model. They kept it for peace of mind. David looked toward the corridor. The monitor was on the counter, near the hub. It was static. White noise. He reached for it. His hand hovered over the plastic device. He didn't want to touch it. He didn't want to know what he might hear. But he had to. He had to know if she was safe. He grabbed the receiver and lifted it to his ear. Through the static, he heard breathing. It was not the soft, rhythmic breathing of a sleeping child. It was heavy, ragged, close to the microphone, and underneath the breathing, there was a sound, a scratching sound, like fingernails on wood. "She's sleeping very soundly," the voice from the smoke detector said. "I made sure of that." David snapped. Adrenaline flooded his system, overriding the fear. He didn't think, he didn't plan, he ran. He sprinted down the hallway, the knife still in his hand. He slammed his shoulder against his daughter's door. It was unlocked. It swung open. The room was dark. The nightlight cast a soft blue glow over the bed. His daughter was there. She was under the covers. She was still. David rushed to the bed. He shook her shoulder. Honey, wake up." She didn't move. He pulled the covers back. Her chest rose and fell, but she wouldn't wake up. She was in a deep, unnatural sleep. On her nightstand next to the lamp was a small device David didn't recognize. It was a black box with a single blue light. It was humming. David grabbed the device. It was warm. He yanked the cord from the wall. The humming stopped. Behind him, in the hallway, the floorboards creaked. David spun around, raising the knife. The hallway was empty, but the baby monitor in his hand crackled to life. The voice was back, but it wasn't coming from the kitchen anymore. It was coming from the monitor. "You shouldn't have come up here, David."
David looked at the monitor. The blue light on the black box he had unplugged began to flash rapidly. He realized then that the device wasn't a speaker. It was a transmitter, and it wasn't just transmitting audio. His phone buzzed again, in his pocket. He fumbled to pull it out. System override initiated. Lockdown mode engaged. The smart locks on the doors. He had installed smart locks. They could be controlled remotely. He watched the icon on his screen change. The little padlock symbols next to front door, back door, and garage all turned red. Locked. Then a new icon appeared. Windows. The windows. He had sensors on the windows, but he didn't have motorized locks. Or did he? He couldn't remember. He had upgraded the system last month. He had added the premium package. Did the premium package include window actuators? He ran to the window in his daughter's room. He grabbed the latch. It wouldn't move. It was fused shut. He pulled harder. It didn't budge. He was trapped. The voice from the monitor changed tone. It became distorted, slower, deeper. "We just want to talk, David." David whispered. "The others, the ones who live in the walls, the ones who watch when you think you are alone." David backed away from the window. He stood between the bed and the door. He held the knife out. He listened. He could hear movement now, not just in the hallway, but inside the walls. A scuttling sound, like rats, but heavier, like something crawling through the insulation, pressing against the drywall. He realized the truth then. The notifications, the glitches, they weren't errors, they were warnings. The system wasn't malfunctioning, it was being used. Someone had gained root access to his home. They had turned his protection into a cage. His phone screen lit up again. A video call. Unknown ID. David stared at the phone. He knew he shouldn't answer, but he had to. He had to see. He swiped green. The screen showed a video feed. It was dark, grainy. It showed a room. There were monitors, banks of screens, and sitting in a chair facing the screens was a figure. The figure turned to the camera. They were wearing a mask, a smooth white mask with no features. The figure raised a hand and waved. Then the figure spoke. It was the same voice from the smoke detector. "Look behind you, David." David whipped around. The closet door in his daughter's room, which he had closed earlier, was now ajar. Just a crack, a sliver of darkness. He stepped toward it. He had to know. He pushed the door open with the tip of the knife.
The closet was full of clothes, hanging shirts, boxes of toys, but in the back, behind the winter coats, there was a hole in the drywall, a perfect square, cut out. And behind the hole, wires, cameras, hard drives, blinking lights. This wasn't a break-in. This had been happening for months, maybe years. The previous owners, the contractors, he didn't know. He saw a hard drive labeled with his name. He saw a folder labeled daughter. David felt sick. He fell to his knees. The knife clattered to the floor. The voice from the monitor laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Now you understand. You are not the homeowner, David. You are the tenant. The lights in the room flickered, then they died. The only light came from the phone in David's hand and the blinking blue light of the device on the nightstand. In the darkness, David heard the closet door creak. It was closing, slowly. He scrambled for the phone. He dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? David gasped. My house! They're in my house! They're in the walls! Sir, calm down. Is the intruder still there? David looked at the closet. The door was shut, but the blinking light from inside the wall was still visible through the crack. Yes, David said, but they never left. The call disconnected. The phone screen went black. David sat in the dark, holding his sleeping daughter's hand. He waited for the sun. He waited for the police. He waited for the system to reset. When the sun came up, the system was green. The locks were open. The cameras showed empty feeds. The hole in the closet was gone. The drywall was smooth, painted over, as if it had never been cut. The police came. They searched the house. They found nothing. No devices, no holes, no recordings. They told David it was a stress-induced hallucination. They told him to check his carbon monoxide detectors. They told him to get some rest. David and his wife moved out a week later. They didn't sell the house, they just left. They left the furniture, they left the clothes, they left the security system. But David kept the phone. Sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet and the world is holding its breath, the phone buzzes. Motion detected, new location. And David knows. He knows that the system is still active. He knows that the tenant is still watching. And he knows that no matter where he goes, the walls have ears. Sleep well.